myself existing, navigating the STEM space probably for 30 years now, whenever you kind of look at what the letters indicate. So, one of the things, and this was why I went into chemistry, I didn't consider myself a chemistry geek or nerd, growing up. I didn't have a chemistry set. The funny backstory is I aced chemistry in high school. And the thing that probably put me over the top was it was a 2-day final. And since I aced it, I was exempt from the final. But I'm in high school, I had nothing else to do. So I took the first part of the final. And I didn't take the second part, but I still had the third highest grade of everybody in the class. And
From one part?
I took one day, one part, and I think it was either number 3 or number 5 highest final collective grade of everybody in the class who took 2 parts.
Wow.
And so I had this, when I went to Georgia, I had to figure out what my degree was going to be. And I'm like, hey, well, I did pretty good in chemistry, so I'll choose chemistry. And, I had a couple of crucible moments where I wasn't quite sure. I always tell people, you take a class in college eventually where you're really going to find out whether that's going to be your degree or not. My roommate, who's a lawyer now, was going to be pre-med, and he didn't make it out of chemistry 101. And so I navigated through, and I made the decision about midway through to go from what was considered a Bachelor of Science with an emphasis in chemistry to a BS chemistry, which is a certified chemist. So I took a lot of chemistry. It was painful my senior year, but I took a lot of chemistry throughout my college years. And then I chose to go into essentially the chemical core. So in the Army, they have a branch that's called the chemical core, which does nuclear, biological, radiological, essentially training, development. They also go to a lot of things with some of the islands where you're talking about radioactive and deactivation of certain things. There's a lot into that technological piece with regard to chemistry that I went into as an officer. And so I did that for about, I think, 8 or 9 years. I worked in the chemical core, and I did, like I said, you go through live agent training, you understand biological warfare, you understand nuclear targeting and radiological, all that stuff that goes with it. So, but I didn't consider myself a chemist because you're doing almost more training and development than you are the technical piece. So I did that for almost a decade. And then I switched and became a research systems analyst. So those who don't know what a operations research systems analyst is, they're kind of high-end problem solvers using statistics and probability. Or companies will use them to figure out Manning models. When you're going to have the attrition, you need to bring in and recruit different people. You could do it for large scale logistics and supply chain management, different ways of moving things over air, land, or sea to get there. So there's a lot of, high-end calculation in the math space, as well as just problem solving from okay, now we're in a space, how do we deal with this operationally so we can get to the end state? And that's kind of the 2 ways I always describe research systems analysis. You actually get an operations research master's degree. Funny story, Keith, I did not go for an operations research degree because for me to stay as what they consider an operations research systems analyst or an ORSA, you had to get a master's in either math, science, or OR. And OR is sort of that combo I talked about. Well, my experience from Georgia, because I decided to switch from that BS emphasis in chemistry to certified chemist, my senior year, I took nothing but chemistry, and like some of the hardest chemistries, physical chemistry, upper level inorganic chemistry, organic chemistry, all the labs, and my brain was fried. I just, you can imagine, if you could, I don't know if you can or can't, if you can imagine, it was a lot. And so I'm done. I'm not going to do math or science as a master's degree. So I did the military training to be an ORSA. I decided to get my master's in adult education, which serves well now in a lot of stuff I do.